In 1995, teacher Eleanor Grant bought a pair of shoes for her struggling student, Clara Jenkins, changing her life. Years later, Clara, now hardened by trauma and a dark past, lures Eleanor into a terrifying encounter, seeking answers and redemption. Bound in an abandoned church, Eleanor confronts Clara's pain, offering unconditional love and hope. As Clara breaks down, she begins to see the possibility of healing. The story ends with the two embracing, their journey toward redemption and forgiveness just beginning. The bond formed by a simple act of kindness might yet save them both. Hi everyone. Welcome to True Emotional Whisper. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. In the winter of 2005, Mrs. Eleanor Grant stood in a dimly lit police station, trembling as she handed over a pair of scuffed shoes to the detective. Across the table, the lead investigator whispered, "These belonged to her, didn't they?" Eleanor nodded, her voice breaking, "Yes, but they weren't supposed to bring her back to me this way." In 1995, Eleanor Grant was a newly hired middle school teacher in a small town in Montana. Fresh out of college, she carried a deep passion for helping children. Among her students that year was a quiet and frail girl named Clara Jenkins, a seventh grader who always sat in the back of the classroom, her hair unkempt and her oversized clothes marking her as the subject of hushed whispers and ridicule. Clara was 13, the daughter of a struggling single mother who juggled 3 part-time jobs. Eleanor noticed the way Clara's shoes, ripped and far too small, strained her every step. On a freezing December morning, when Clara arrived with duct-taped sneakers and bleeding heels, Eleanor decided she couldn't stand by any longer. Eleanor took Clara shopping after school one day, buying her a sturdy pair of sneakers. Clara's eyes lit up for the first time that semester. With trembling hands, she accepted the shoes, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nobody's ever done anything like this for me before." The shoes seemed to change everything. Clara began to smile more, her grades improved, and she even joined the school's cross-country team. But when the school year ended, Clara abruptly disappeared. Her family moved without notice, and Eleanor never heard from her again. Years later, an unexpected reunion. In 2020, Eleanor, now a seasoned teacher nearing retirement, received a mysterious package at her doorstep. Inside was a single worn-out sneaker, eerily familiar. Alongside it was a letter signed simply, "I owe you more than you know. Let's meet." See. Intrigued and a little unsettled, Eleanor followed the address provided and found herself at an abandoned church on the outskirts of town. There, a woman emerged from the shadows. Clara, now in her late 30s, unrecognizable but for her piercing blue eyes. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she said, "You saved my life once. Now, I'm going to save yours." Before Eleanor could respond, she felt a sharp sting on her neck. Her vision blurred, and darkness swallowed her whole. When she awoke, she was in a locked room, her hands bound. A tape recorder sat on a dusty table, playing Clara's voice on loop. "You'll finally understand why kindness can be dangerous. You gave me hope once, but hope isn't always enough." The story is far from over. What happened to Clara during the years she disappeared? Why has she turned to such a sinister path? And what secrets about Eleanor's past might come to light as the chilling truth unravels? The shoes that started it all now haunt Eleanor. A reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple in ways we can never predict. Eleanor's mind raced as the tape recorder's static hiss filled the room. The haunting cadence of Clara's voice echoed, making her shudder. The once timid girl she had helped was now a terrifying enigma. She strained against the ropes binding her hands, her heart pounding, not just from fear but from the overwhelming grief of how something so innocent, a pair of shoes, had spiraled into this nightmare. As Eleanor sat helpless in the dim room, fragments of her memories surfaced. She remembered Clara's shy smile when she had tried on the new shoes. It wasn't just a smile. It was hope, fragile and fleeting, like sunlight breaking through clouds. What had gone so wrong? What pain had Clara endured in the years they had been apart? Eleanor whispered into the emptiness. "Clara, wherever you are, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Meanwhile, Clara sat in another room, staring at a photo of Eleanor from years ago. Tears streamed down her face as she gripped the sneakers Eleanor had gifted her. Her life had been a harrowing journey after they moved. Her mother had fallen deeper into addiction, dragging Clara through shelters and unsafe streets. Clara had clung to those shoes like a lifeline, but eventually, they wore out, just like her hope. A chance encounter with a manipulative man promising safety had pulled Clara into a world of crime, exploitation, and despair. She had survived, but barely, and the scars were now her armor. When she tracked down Eleanor, it wasn't revenge she sought. It was something she didn't even fully understand herself. Eleanor noticed the ropes around her wrists were old and frayed. She twisted her hands, ignoring the sting of the fibers digging into her skin. The recorder clicked off, plunging the room into silence. Gathering her courage, she worked furiously to free herself, desperate to find Clara and bring her back from the edge. The door creaked open suddenly. Clara stood there, her face a mixture of rage and sorrow. In her hands, she held a photograph, a young Clara, smiling with her new shoes. She threw it at Eleanor, her voice shaking. "Do you even know what you did to me? You made me believe in something that didn't exist." Eleanor stared at Clara, her tears flowing freely. "I didn't know, Clara, but I'm here now. Let me help you." Clara's hardened expression faltered for a moment. For the first time, the anger in her eyes seemed to waver, replaced by the vulnerable child Eleanor had once known. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. "It's too late," Clara whispered. "Some wounds don't heal." She turned to leave, but Eleanor called out, "You came back to me, Clara. That means something. Don't let your pain win." The next sound Eleanor heard was the slamming of the door. She didn't know if Clara was gone for good or if she'd return. But one thing was certain. Their story was far from over. Eleanor resolved to find Clara, to understand her pain, and to be the anchor she never had. For Clara, the journey was only beginning. Would she let her bitterness consume her, or would she allow Eleanor's love to rekindle the light she buried so long ago? Some acts of kindness ripple in unimaginable ways, leaving scars and hope intertwined. The question remained, could they find their way back to each other, or would the past shadows claim them both? Eleanor waited in the silence of the darkened room, the ropes finally loose around her wrists. Clara's footsteps had faded, but her words lingered in the air. "Some wounds don't heal." With trembling hands, Eleanor stood, her body aching from hours of captivity, her mind racing. She had to find Clara, not to escape, but to reach her before the darkness consumed her completely. The door Clara had slammed wasn't locked. Eleanor stepped through cautiously, entering a hallway dimly lit by flickering bulbs. On a nearby table sat the photograph Clara had thrown at her earlier. Eleanor picked it up, her fingers brushing over the smiling face of a younger Clara. "I should have done more," she whispered to herself. Down the street, Clara leaned against her car, clutching the sneakers Eleanor had given her years ago. Her chest heaved as tears streamed down her face. She hated how vulnerable she felt, how one person's kindness had both saved her and shattered her in ways she couldn't explain. Memories flashed in her mind. Eleanor's warmth, her encouragement, the small hope those shoes represented. But then came the memories of everything that followed. Her mother's overdose, the shelters, the men who took advantage of her, the crime she had to commit just to survive. She opened the car door, ready to leave, but something inside her hesitated. She glanced back at the church where she had left Eleanor. Inside the church, Eleanor followed faint sounds, calling out, "Clara, I know you're hurting. I'm so sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now. Please, let me help you." The echo of her voice was met with silence. Eleanor pushed open a heavy door and found herself in a small room filled with papers and photographs pinned to the walls. It was Clara's life, scrapbooks of pain, missing persons posters of herself, and even faded copies of letters she had tried to send but never mailed. On a table lay a knife, a worn journal, and the scuffed sneakers. Eleanor's heart broke as she pieced together the years of suffering Clara had endured. Suddenly, Clara appeared in the doorway, her face shadowed but her voice trembling. "Why did you come after me? After everything, why do you still care?" Eleanor stepped forward, unafraid. "Because you mattered to me then, and you still matter to me now. You don't have to fight this alone." Clara's grip tightened on the sneakers, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. I've done terrible things. Things that can't be forgiven." Eleanor placed a hand on her chest, her voice steady. "We're all broken in some way, Clara, but you're not beyond saving. Let me help you find a way out of this. Please." For the first time in years, Clara let the sneakers fall to the ground as she collapsed into Eleanor's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Eleanor held her tightly, whispering, "It's never too late to start over." Outside, the first rays of morning light began to creep through the windows of the old church. The pain of the past wasn't gone, but for the first time, Clara felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Their journey was far from over, but together, they would try to build a future where kindness wouldn't feel like a curse, and where Clara could finally believe she deserved a second chance.